back to the Lunenburg Zoning Board of Appeals. Again, I'll remind people how the hearing will proceed. First, I have to give a notice that in accordance with the open meeting law, we will be broadcast live through local access cable, on Facebook Live, on the public access Facebook page, and we will be able to be found on the Lunenburg Public Access YouTube channel within 24 hours after the meeting. To participate remotely from a computer, you'll use the Zoom meeting link, which is https://us.zoom.us/7927370353, and you can raise your hand to request to speak. This is a continuance of a comprehensive 40B permit. The property which is the subject of this case is located at 318, 390, and 400 Howard Street, Lunenburg, Mass., known as Pondview Commons. Assessor map 6, 17, and 17, parcel 24, 20, and 34, respectively. The applicant is seeking a 40B approval for a comprehensive permit for the purpose of developing a 200-unit apartment community at 318, 390, and 400 Howard Street, Lunenburg, Mass. I will introduce the board. To my left is Town Council, Adam Costa, Lisa Normandin, the board secretary. I'm Alfred Gravel. This is Hans Winthrop, Patrick Callahan, Tony Nicastro, and we also have David Black, who is coming to us on Zoom. The way that this will go forward, the applicant will again be able to come to the mic, submission of new additional documents or answer questions. You please come forward to the mic, give your name and address, and board members will have the opportunity to ask questions they may have while you're on the application while you're at the mic. There will be a public comment period, so again, you'll please come forward to the mic, give your name and address all comments and questions to the board. And with that, the first order of business tonight is the fees. So we have still not addressed that. There are two parts to fees. There is the general administration and process fee, and then there is the peer review, technical planning review fees. And with that, I would like the applicant to address that. I know the last time you were here, you had suggested a number. I believe it was $4,500 based on a 40R.
Yes, so good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Don Bornstein. I'm the attorney for the applicant. My office is Johnson & Bornstein. We are located at 12 Chestnut Street in Andover, Massachusetts. Yes, and you're correct, Mr. Chairman. I did point to the planning board publishes a schedule of fees for various project types. They list a fee type for, I just want to read from the schedule. They have a fee type for development plan review, 40R and similar developments, and the category fee that this project would fall into would be a $750 base fee, and then $25 per dwelling for over 50 dwellings. And we believe that is the fee category that this project should fall into. I did recognize that your board's comprehensive permit regulations would calculate an administrative fee for this project of $41,000. And I noted in the original comprehensive permit application that I believe that was not consistent with the state regulations on the fees that the board may charge for comprehensive permits. And really for two reasons. One, it wasn't reasonably related to the actual administrative costs that the board would incur in connection with processing the application. And two, it was well above the fees charged for other projects, similar projects in town. And for that, again, I just point back to that fee schedule where development site plan review would generate a fee of $4,500 for this project. So that's why we believe the $4,500 fee is appropriate for this project. In connection with that, we availed ourselves of the mechanism under your rules that allow us to request a waiver of fees. So rather than just ignoring the planning board's regulations, we did note that they existed, noted that they would call for a $41,000 fee, and asked for a waiver under your board rules for comprehensive permits, that the fee for this project be made the $4,500, which is the type of fee that would be charged under the planning board schedule of fees, and is more consistent with the state regulations on the charging of fees.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and with that, I will tell you that I checked with some other boards, like the planning board and a few others in towns, and I could think that the fee, a reasonable fee, is probably more in the $10,000 to $15,000 range. But I'm going to open it up to the board, and they can discuss what they've come up with fees.
Mr. Chairman, I'll go because I think that's, I mean, I think we've talked before last time. I'm not going to rehash it, but I mean, you know, we're going by what the town regulations say in terms of what the applicant should be paying. I understand that the applicant's looking for a waiver. I'm not willing to grant a waiver for the total amount of it, and $4,500 is definitely not reasonable to my liking. You know, the rules are the rules. I'm just trying to enforce them. That's what we do. I'd be interested in something more than $4,500 though from the applicant. And I understand that, you know, the planning board, the 40R has, you know, those fees in place. But I'm looking at, you know, our comprehensive fees and the rules and regulations of our 40B, and it clearly says that someone put a number to it for a reason. Granted, I don't think we're going to come to $40,000 for administrative fees for the project. However, I think that, you know, having counsel here, you know, his charges are certainly probably administrative, I would think, in terms of just the town. So I concur with the chairman that probably the range of $10,000 to $15,000 would be amenable to me.
Okay.
Do we have any information on any of the other similar projects recently? Like, I know we've had a few.
Well, we haven't had the last 40B we had was Gordon on Wayland Road, and that was in 2014 or 17?
I think 14.
14, yeah. So things have changed since then.
There's been revisions, so these fees came in
Yeah,
after that.
That was revised after that.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Probably that's why. I mean, it could be a reason why they decided to have the fees. Who knows, right?
True. Tony, do you have any?
I pretty much concur with what's already been said. I mean,
Then I'll ask your reaction to, you know, where we're starting to lean to, which would be 25%, basically, a little more. Say we settled on 12,000.
You know, I'll respond to the comments so far about the fees. So when I have my own thoughts on why the board's rules for comprehensive permit provide for a $41,000 fee. This is just my speculation, but I think that's to dissuade the filing of comprehensive permits. There are numerous examples in the board's rules on comp permits that are unusual and overly stringent requirements for comprehensive permits that aren't reflected in the town's other rule schemes or application filing requirements. So, in just that little bit of context I just heard was there was a large 40B project that happened, and then these rules came out afterwards. My guess is that was an overreaction to the comprehensive permit that had just come before the town. I haven't seen an administrative fee for $41,000 charged by another town. There's no justification in the rules where the $41,000 comes from, and I don't think it's a safe assumption to say there must have been a reason other than the reason to make it harder to file a comprehensive permit. That's what those rules read like to me. We complied with them the best we can. And I don't mean this as an offense to the board. I don't think any of the members here necessarily wrote those rules. I suspect you didn't because they've been around a while. But I've seen rules in other communities that are designed to make comprehensive permits hard. That's prohibited by state law, and I think that's what these rules in general reflect. So that's part of our pushback on the 41,000. 4,500 is deemed an appropriate, reasonable fee for projects that would, I suspect, get a very similar review. A 40R project is reviewed very similarly to the comprehensive permit project. Remember, the review that's done through the comprehensive permit stage is really a preliminary plan, so these aren't final engineered plans. These are not plans at a level of detail that would justify those kind of fees. They're plans that are more similar to, I suspect, the 40R plans that the planning board reviews for their $4,500 fee. And that's why I think that fee is reasonable. And I'm not necessarily hearing what the expenses are of the board that justify a higher fee than that. That the board's attorney's fees, the town's legal fees in this are not chargeable to the applicant as administrative expenses. We will take up some of your staff time, absolutely. Lisa knows that probably better than anybody. But we're not taking up an exorbitant amount of time, I don't believe. I believe we'll take up a handful of hours a month in staff time. And I don't see how we get to a number that's a lot higher than a $4,500 number when that fee needs to bear a reasonable relationship to the actual cost of the board.
Okay, then I'll ask for.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask just a question? Just a couple questions, because I'm looking, what's the totality of I can't remember off the top of my head, and I was looking for the numbers, the totality of the project. Like, is it $40 million?
Hold on one second, I'll ask. I think that number's roughly accurate.
Okay.
Mr. O'Brien recalls it to be between 40 and 50 for the
that's
overall
what I thought,
construction
okay.
project.
All right, so that, we're haggling over, I don't know, $6,000 on a $40 million project for that. And then, let me ask you this, on the technical planning fees, which my calculations come to $25,000 just for the minimum, and then the $20,000, so another $10,000, $20,000 for another 100 units, I think. And so, are you asking for waivers from that as well?
No, they can't.
We've asked for waivers from what your rules require. So your rules calculate a $41,000 administrative fee.
Yeah,
and
no,
a-
yeah, yeah.
And a $45,000
Right.
technical
Correct.
deposit, we'll call it.
Right, and so are you, they can't come down on.
They have to pay the technical. We have to supply them with the quotes,
Correct, and then they
and
take
they have
that
to
off.
approve it,
right.
but we are allowed to hire peer reviews, and if you've already seen, we did the traffic, and that was $8,500. One of the quotes today that came in for a civil engineering was $41,000, so you're already well over what we were looking for.
I'll note the other civil engineer came in at $20,000 for the same work. So as you can see, these numbers have some
That's-
flexibility to them.
Right. They are, but we'll get to the technical part later, because, I mean, if we don't spend the money, we have to return to you anyway, so if you give us whatever amount and we don't use that for peer reviews, you get that money back, the applicant. So it isn't like, we keep the change.
That's a good way of putting it, if I can just respond to that briefly, Mr. Chairman. The applicant has, and I was clear, I believe, at the last hearing session, we recognize the obligation to contribute to peer review fees for the board, so you can have a good, robust peer review of the project, like we would expect. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is the rule that says we have to come up with $45,000 before we file an application. My personal feeling is that is to create a barrier to entry for comprehensive permit projects. We have already, when we were asked to, when the board accepted a traffic peer review, and designated that, I think, 2 weeks ago. I believe that was on a Thursday evening? Wednesday. Wednesday, you had a check in hand on Monday. I mailed it out from my office on Friday. So my client brought me the check the next day. I put it in the mail that same day. It was overnighted. It was received at Town Hall on the Monday. So we don't have an objection to paying to peer review fees.
I understand that, but also, I mean, I know we're on the time restraints as well. So when we do it that way, even though it was quick, they got it on Monday, it wasn't deposited till Tuesday, and I don't think that, I heard that it was deposited until the day after that. So we lost like four days on that, you know, from the time. So I'm concerned that if we do that with every peer review, and I lose 4 or 5 days, I could end up losing a month of scheduled hearing, and when we're under a 180-day schedule. That's one issue with it. Whereas if the money was there and you said, I approve it, we could say that day, we're good to go.
I understand, not an unreasonable concern, Mr. Chairman. I would note that it's been, you know, the better part of 2 weeks, and there has, you know, we've seen nothing from the peer review, or our traffic engineer hasn't been contacted. So I don't know that those 4 days were truly lost in that instance. But I can understand the concern that if there were delays in funding peer review, that would delay the board's consideration potentially. I understand that. That's not unreasonable.
Okay. So I do want to settle this tonight so we can move on.
Yeah, I don't think, you know, I'd rather get on to more like the sewer and some more important
Right.
aspects of the
But
of the
we have
permit,
to
but-
settle this. I
Yeah.
want to make sure
Yeah, I
we
agree.
get the money.
Yeah.
I'm playing let's make a deal behind you as we're talking.
Smart move.
So I know the board has agenda for tonight, and we have items laid out. The next item, or one of the items on the list, maybe it's not the next one, is peer review. And administrative costs and peer review costs do go somewhat hand in hand. They're expenses of the process. And so I think what I'd propose is this, is that we take some issue with the peer review proposal that has come out at twice the other peer review proposal. So we clearly have a simple preference for the lower priced peer review, especially where that peer reviewer is someone who is, or at least I understand, does peer review for other town boards presently, clearly qualified. What I'd like to propose is that the applicant pay a $10,000 administrative fee, which I think is equivalent to what we've been talking about, and also fund the first half of the Graves Engineering civil peer review, and do that as soon as possible. And that will get, understanding that we still have traffic issues to get through, so we've hired a peer reviewer, funded that. That's going to take a little bit of time. Civil peer review, if you look at the scope of that, the civil peer review actually expects that there will be 4 rounds of peer review between the project designer and the peer reviewer, plus 3 hearing sessions. So those things are all, you know, that's a couple months down the road. That's easily a couple months worth of work just between the engineers. So what we propose to do is fund the first half of the civil peer review. We've already funded the entirety of the traffic peer review. And we pay the board as an agreed administrative fee $10,000, which is more than double what I think we're required to pay.
So what are you offering to put in?
Sure. So we pay $10,000 for the administrative fee, where we had been suggesting that $4,500 was something that was completely defensible. And then we'd pay another $10,000 as the 53G account deposit towards civil peer review. So we'd fund the first half of the civil peer review. Graves has a budget, I think it's 20,000, it's either 20,800 or 20,080.
Yeah, it was 2,800, I think.
So we'd fund the first half of that, get the civil peer reviewer able to start working and reviewing, and then, of course, fund the second half as soon as we had notice from Graves that they were getting towards the end of that first half deposit.
Okay, one of the other concerns is, you know, the Graves quote just came in, so, and it's like a 1-page. The other quote, was, what was it, PSC, which was Tom Houston. I know his quote was $41,000, but it's a much more detailed quote than what we've had, and also we actually worked with that on a 40B project many years ago now, at least 12. So I'm not, because this just came in, I'm not fully aware what this covers, where I'm more aware that this is more detailed and seems to cover more. So I just want to know how the rest of the board feels on that, because I haven't dealt with this company before. So, I'll ask our town council if he is familiar.
Are you asking, Mr. Chairman, about the peer review quotes from Graves and from PSC?
Correct.
So I'm familiar with both firms. As the applicant has stated, Graves Engineering has done prior work, at least more recent work in the sense that it's been during my tenure in the town of Lunenburg for the planning board. I'm not aware of any work that Graves may or may not have done for the zoning board. I know that, Mr. Chairman, you've been a member of the zoning board for quite some time, so you would know better than I would. But they have done work for the planning board in recent years. I'm not aware of whether Graves Engineering has done any Chapter 40B work in Lunenburg. I do know that PSC, another firm with which I've worked in the past, has 40B experience generally, and I do know just simply because they're referenced in PSC's quote and proposal that they've worked on 2 different 40B projects in Lunenburg. Both of those projects predate me, my involvement in the town of Lunenburg, so I was not involved in either of those projects or with PSC. I would also note that, I do think that I've had an opportunity, maybe more so than you have, Mr. Chairman, to look at the quotes, and they're both comprehensive. I'm sure that both firms are more than qualified to do the work. But I do think that the part of the explanation, at least as I read it, and I've looked at a fair number of these over the years, for the significant difference in cost, I mean, one is nearly double the other, is that the PSC quote, the higher of the 2 quotes, is not just more detailed, it's actually more comprehensive. It covers more things. Now, I don't know that you need those additional things covered. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. If you do, then all that means is, yes, you could go with Graves now, but they're going to end up charging you in the back end to do those things that are not included in their quote. Conversely, if you don't need those things, well, then you could seek a revised quote from PSC that omitted those things, and then we may have apples to apples, or at least quotes that are closer in terms of numeric value. For example, when you look at the PSC quote, it's referencing architectural reviews, it's referencing landscape reviews. It's, I believe it incorporates meetings, a greater number of meetings than would be incorporated in the flat fee that Graves proposed. Graves has additional meetings being on a suggested budget per meeting, additional above and beyond their flat fee quote. So again, I'm not saying, I haven't done the math, I haven't done a side-by-side comparison, task by task, but I don't want to suggest that one firm is charging double what the other firm is charging for the exact same services. Right. I don't think that's the case.
No, I didn't either. That's why I'm asking the question.
Right. I'd also just offer a caution to the board, and I appreciate the applicant making a pitch for his client, the applicant's attorney making a pitch for his client. This process really shouldn't be, let's make a deal. You should be deciding the fees based upon an analysis of the administrative fee and based upon your beliefs with respect to charging an upfront peer review fee of $45,000 versus allowing that fee to be paid in a more piecemeal fashion based on the merits of that fee. You shouldn't be tying that into, okay, well, we'll accept your offer of a $10,000 administrative fee if we agree to go with the applicant's choice of the peer reviewer. Those should be separate decisions made by the board in the board's discretion. Again, I'm not counseling you against using Graves. I'm not counseling you against accepting the $10,000 offer of an administrative fee. That seems to be close to what you were proposing. I'm just cautioning you that I think these decisions should be made individually on their merits, not as part of a package deal.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I like, Mr. Chairman, I like the $10,000 administrative fee. I think that's, I think it's fair. I mean, based on what the applicant is talking about in terms of, reasonable administrative fees, I have no idea. I'm just going by what our rules and regulations say you should be paying a fee for. So I'm willing to accept that. With respect to the technical planning fee, I just have a quick question. So what happens, let's say, for instance, that he has to put the $45,000 in, but the engineering fee comes out to $40,000. We have to go back to the applicant for more fees, and if he's amenable to giving more dollars than the $45,000 for the technical review, because that really only has, that doesn't include sewer, right? And it doesn't include water.
Right.
And so we still have those fees that it could be similar numbers. So you're looking at, the applicant possibly, running out of the $45,000 very quickly with this board on the technical review.
I think you're right. I think we went out very quickly, because I do think we're gonna need more peer reviews. Absolutely gonna need sewer and water review.
Can we, as the board, use the administrative fee, that $41,000 for the technical review fees, to backfill that if we ran out of money?
No.
No?
You can't.
Okay, all right.
So, and let me just offer this as a point of comparison. So, again, I appreciate the applicant's attorney's speculation as to maybe the source of these fees. I'm not going to speculate. I wasn't here in 2014, 15, 16 when these fees were adopted. I appreciate that they were adopted on the heels of a number of 40B projects you had. I don't know if the intent was to dissuade potential 40B developers, or if it was simply based upon your experience as a community in terms of the costs of processing those applications and the sum of peer reviews that have been required for those projects, a couple of which were quite large. And I imagine that the peer reviews far exceeded $45,000 for those projects. So I'd be speculating as much as anybody to guess why the fees are what they are. The reality is they are what they are. So it's a decision for you to make. The applicant, can appeal that determination, or you can come to an agreement. And it sounds like maybe we're heading in that direction. With respect to the peer review fees, the reason those are separated from the administrative fees is because, as the chairman's indicated, those are refundable. They're placed into an escrow account. They can be refunded to the applicant if they're unspent. I'm not suggesting that these numbers, 10,000, 8,000, 45,000, are going to be unspent. As you say, with this level of civil review for a project of this magnitude, especially if we begin to talk water and sewer, likely the total fees are going to exceed that amount. What I would caution the board is, if the board is not going to collect the $45,000 up front, and it's already received a portion of that because one check was provided to the board. Right. If it's not going to collect the full amount up front, if it's going to accept a lesser amount even than what one of these quotes provides for, you need to be certain as a board, through your staff, that you're notifying your peer review consultant that that's all the money you have. Because if they provided a lump sum of, just again to refer to Graves Engineering's quote of $20,800 for their services, exclusive of additional meetings and subsequent peer reviews beyond what's defined in the document, and you're only receiving $10,400, 50% of that amount, you don't want them to do 3/4 of the work in their scope, because then if you can't collect from the applicant because the applicant sees that things are heading in a poor direction and thinks the applicant's going to be denied, you're on the hook for paying your peer review consultant. Now the town has to find that money in its coffers to pay the consultant, because you never got it from the applicant in advance of signing the contract. So we'd want to sign a partial contract with Graves or PSC. We'd want to sign a contract that acknowledges that each step in the contract is contingent upon receipt of funds from the applicant, just to provide that protection to the town if you're not going to collect the full sum up front.
Right. Thank you. Okay, with that, I think I would recommend we accept the $10,000 for the administration fee, but the full amount on the peer review of 45.
Just to be clear, that is not the applicant's offer. Lest we forget that.
That's what?
Lest we forget that is not the applicant's offer.
No, but that's what the board expects.
I
That's
understand.
what's in the rule. I mean, the technical part, I don't see where you have an issue paying that, because if you don't do peer reviews again, you get the money back. It isn't like, again, we're keeping it. That does allow, we don't want to go out and tell somebody, like our council said, that, oh, we have only got half the money.
Oh, and I am certainly not expecting the board to take on liability for the town of the full amount of the peer reviewer's fee, and then we stiff you for the second half. That is not what I'm expecting. What I'm expecting is what Adam has described, is that you accept the peer review proposal with communication with the peer reviewer saying, we have the first half funded, don't go beyond the first half, and when you get close or partway through that first half, notify us, and then we're going to make the applicant cough up the second half. So we keep the peer reviewer going, and that's not unusual for peer review fees. And so we're not expecting that the board take on liability that the applicant isn't funding. We just think there's a reasonable arrangement, and that's often how peer review fees are done. In fact, that's the way both of these quotes anticipate, because both of these quotes say, and it might be more. And when they get to the it might be more, start getting close to the it might be more, they're going to tell you, they should tell you. And then you're going to request of us, we need more peer review fees, and we're going to say, well, why? And you're going to explain it, and we're going to say, yeah, you need more peer review fees, and then we've got to fund those. But that's the peer review process that I'm familiar with. I think it's a reasonable way to do it. But we're not asking the board to go out on a limb for the second half of the peer review fees.
But if you know up front, say we want PSC, and you know up front it's going to be $41,000, why would you want to only pay half, and then us have to go back to you and say, okay, we've spent it, now please give us the other half, and you say, well, let us think about it.
On the PSC proposal, Adam did point out a difference between the two, is the PSC proposal does provide for review of architecture and landscaping. But that, I think, is the only difference between the two quotes. Remember, these are not building plans, so there's no building code review that gets done here. You have elevations and floor plans, which are in essence sketch architecture. That's all that's required through the comp permit stage. When and if a comp permit is issued, then we have to go to blueprints or building plans and submit those to the building department, and that gets full building code review. But that's not what's done here. And the landscaping plan, I mean, it's what people think of the landscaping plan, I suppose. And I don't know that a civil
It can be
engineer.
important.
I'm not dissuading how important it is. It is important. In fact, landscaping, I think, is one of the more important elements of what a project's going to look like, how it's going to function for the occupants. I think it is actually very important.
Architecture is also important.
Yes, absolutely. But I'm just saying the review that gets done by a civil engineer on those two things, one, it's not worth $20,000. And two, that really isn't the expert, that if you want expert review of architectural, like the design, the aesthetics, the appearance, that's not usually in the domain of the civil engineer. And if we're talking about just distance between plantings and things like that, I don't think that makes up the difference. I don't think that makes up the difference.
I think
But-
one of the other things too, just, like we're gonna talk about water and sewer, but I haven't seen, you haven't provided any fully engineered plans at all for what you're gonna do with water and sewer. You've also, come up with a number of, at $4 million, but we haven't seen any quote. Yeah, we got something in today, or yesterday, I think, from, what's the name of the company?
Is that
Wright Pierce.
Yeah.
And they're saying this is gonna cost their estimate would be like 8.7 million, not including pumping stations and a lot of other things that go along with it. So, so far, all you've given us is verbal. There's nothing in that white book, even though it's a thick book, that really has a lot of what I would be considered engineered plans to look at and go by. So how do we get a peer consultant? To begin with, do you have those plans? Are they done?
So maybe we'll talk, and it looks like Attorney Costa might also want to weigh in on this. But I can tell you
I agree.
for sewer, what I would expect is we would provide basically the same level of plan that we provide for everything else, which is a preliminary level of design. Now, my client has surveyed the entire run of the proposed lines, has determined that they're feasible, and has a level of feasibility design that would be provided to the board for those utility runs. They would not be fully engineered plans, though. And that wouldn't be expected during the comp permit process. Once we got, and applicants can actually not be required to fully engineer aspects of this project until we know whether or not we're getting a comprehensive permit, either from you or the HAC or someone else. Once we know we have a comprehensive permit, then of course to build those things between there and actual construction, that's when all the full engineering happens. So we would provide a level of preliminary plan that demonstrates that that utility line is feasible and possible. We'd also be able to provide costing materials and where we come up with our costing, and why we think the $8 million is way over what it would actually cost the developer to construct those lines. And then I'll just note that I think Attorney Costa wants to weigh in on that.
Okay. Would you like to speak?
I would, Mr. Chairman. So I want to say a couple of things. So the first is I want to be sure, again, that we're not getting too far off topic because we somehow shifted from engineering over to sewer and water, and those are two separate topics, and we haven't even really fully fleshed out the need, the time frame. We haven't sought quotes for reviews of sewer or water, which are not within the scope of either of these quotes you presently have. I think it's important to acknowledge that because we've spent some time already talking about a $45,000 peer review fee. I think the applicant has paid, what, $8 already for purposes of the traffic? Even if we're talking about paying half of the $20,000 quote, and I know we haven't gotten there yet because you went to 45, you went to 20, but even if they paid half of that, that's now they're up to 18. If you add the other half and then you add sewer and water, they're going to be at the 45 before you know it. It's not going to take long to get there. With respect to the comments from the applicant's attorney, I tend to agree with Attorney Borenstein on one point, and that is that, you know, the term fully engineered was used, and that's not a term that can be used in the context of Chapter 40B. The law is structured, for better or for worse, to not require applicants to submit fully engineered plans to permitting authorities like the ZBA. There's a nuance there, though, and it applies particularly in a case like this, which is, you know, if we're talking about general engineering plans, certainly I would expect a very preliminary nature of plans submitted, sufficient enough for review by your peer review consultants, but truly preliminary engineering plans. On the water and sewer issues, we're talking about not just mere connections to water and sewer. I've seen that for projects, and a very preliminary design, often incorporated as part of the engineering review, is submitted by an applicant. We're talking about significant extensions of water and sewer within the public infrastructure within the public rights of way. And then connections to those extensions. And I don't know that I'm saying anything different than what Attorney Borenstein is saying, but what you will need at some point in this process, ideally sooner than later, is some sufficient level of detail on water and sewer, certainly more than has been submitted with the application so far, to allow you to make an informed decision about whether you're going to allow these extensions to the extent you can, whether you're going to grant or allow these connections to the extent you can, and to determine the extent to which you need peer review of those plans that have been received, because you're being asked to stand in the shoes of the water district and the sewer commission, and they would require at least that sufficient preliminary information to determine that these connections not just are feasible, but can be done feasibly, can be done safely, can be done in accordance with the standards that would apply if the town were extending its own water, or the district were extending its own, the town were extending its own sewer, or the district were extending its own water lines. So you will need that information as this process unfolds. But you're going to have to get additional quotes for those services if you wish to if you wish to have those peer reviewed.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just ask the applicant if we could just agree on $10,000 administrative fee and at least $25,000 in the technical peer review fee, the fund. Just to get something going. If we can get 10 and we've got the 25,
What makes me
we can
nervous?
make a decision on the engineering at some point.
Well, I'd like to get these things done, so we've got the peer reviews in mind. But, like I say, some things that comes in 2 hours before the meeting.
Yeah, no, I think And the problem is
I could-
now, because we're 2 weeks, we're not gonna do the day before Thanksgiving, so it
Right.
pushes out another month.
Right.
I think we should do what we said before, is give you the authority, and, maybe the board can chime in, but give you the authority, to review both, give a chance to review both of them, maybe go back to, the other one and say, hey, chop this off, chop that off, to compare apples to apples and see what they come up with.
I don't like the partial.
Because that
We
one-
know that we're gonna spend that 45, and it's gonna go quick.
Yeah, and on that one, I think, it's an $800 additional every time they come to a meeting. So if they have 5 additional meetings, it's ringing up the bell.
Right.
So,
Right, and like I say, there might be more. And I don't like I kinda don't like the plan where you put in partial and then we gotta come back to you. If you say, hey, it's $20,000, well, we should have the money up front and not have to go back. Not tell them, only do half. So if they do half, right, and then we come to you and for whatever reason you decide no, we don't agree, we are stuck with it. The town is stuck with the rest of it, right or wrong.
I guess I don't see how the town gets stuck with the rest of the bill if the work hasn't been
If we
done.
hire them and their fee is $20,000 and we've only got 10,000 or 15,000 in the kitty at this point, and you say, oh, well, let's get to halfway point or whatever, and we get stuck for the rest of it because you don't agree, the town would have to pay it.
Yeah, I guess, and that's not really what I'm suggesting that the board
I'm
does.
not suggesting that that's what you're gonna do. I'm just suggesting that that is out there, that it could happen. So I don't see why you would be afraid to put this money in up front. When we've already spent, you got 20,000 here, you got 8,500 on the other, actually, so you're already up to almost 30,000 spent. So it isn't like we're asking for some phenomenal amount of money up front. We're asking you to pay the full fee and the 10,000 administration fee.
Yes, and so I do a lot of comprehensive permit work. And administrative fees and peer review fees can become part of what gets injected in the discussion of building affordable housing. And here we have peer reviews. I actually think the scope of them are very similar. There's one, I think, fairly minor line item that's a difference between them in my mind. We've got rules that say we have to cough up $45,000 right off the bat. Really, as we file, we're supposed to submit $45,000 according to the town rules. And then we have a peer review quote that comes in at $40,000. And then we have another peer review, someone who's doing work for the town right now, that comes in at half that with a very similar scope, if not the same. I understand that, but a different scope. So applicants, I think, are wise, and I generally counsel my clients to not just write blank checks on peer reviews for comp permits, because that blank check can get a lot larger. Then you have some, at least oversight or participation in peer review. I recognize fully that comprehensive permit applicants have an obligation and a duty to fund peer review, so towns have the technical assistance they need to review projects in a fair and reasonable way, so when affordable housing gets built, it's good affordable housing and the project will work and it gets built correctly, and it's a good project that everyone can be proud of. I believe in that system. What I don't believe in is developers walking in and just open up their wallets and not having any participation in that process. So that's why when I see rules that require $45,000 deposit, we haven't seen a scope, we haven't seen a peer review, no one's been named, we don't know what that goes for, it's a black box to us. And we're not even allowed to come before the board before we write that check. That system concerns me, and I counsel my clients appropriately. That's not to say that I counsel my clients to not pay their bills for peer review, because if they want a project that they're going to get approved, they're going to have to pay their reasonable peer review bills. That's the process. But that's why I've suggested, and I've tried to break the logjam a little bit, because the $4,500, I think, is on the administrative fee is completely defensible. It's in the town's own schedule of fees. The 41,000 is clearly not even a talking point, I think, because it has no justification spelled out in the rules. And so I put that option out there just to try and see if we can find something that we can all get our arms around, and a fair way to move forward. And I'm not suggesting in any way that just because we pay half the peer review fee now, that we can skip out on the rest of the half. Because if we don't fund reasonable peer review, you're going to deny us for not funding reasonable peer review. And that's not the argument I want to necessarily have in front of the HAC, because it's a harder argument for me to have. What's an easy argument for me to have is to say, we don't have to pay $41,000 in administrative fee. That's an easy argument for me to have with the HAC. But I'm just trying to find a fair and reasonable way to go forward without,
I think we are too, and I'd like to get some resolution on the fee, so, I mean, you're willing to give the 10 on the administrative fees. What are you willing to give for the peer review if it's not gonna be the whole $45,000? I mean, if we put at least $25,000 or $25,000 in, at least we can make a decision.
I don't know, because I don't see anywhere on this that says, hey, well, you know, what we gotta pay them up front.
yeah,
Says their budget's $20,800, but it doesn't say that, you know, do we have to write them the check up front? I don't know, they don't put it in, they don't have a schedule, they don't have anything.
We're giving you a break on the administrative fee, right?
I think I'm giving you a break, but okay,
It all depends on how you look at it, I guess, right?
it does.
You owe us 41, we're willing to give you a break. I say, why don't you just give us, I'm even willing to go less than 10 and say, get the 7, pay a 7 in administrative fee and the 45 in the technical. And I'd be happy with that. So you pay the full technical and only pay 7 on the administrative fee, off the 41.
I hear you, that, what that,
And that's not a deal package, I'm just trying to throw it out there.
no,
The
they're,
chairman, I think, is looking for the full fee, which I understand. Yeah. And I tend to agree with him
Because I think it's just gonna go, you know,
it'll give us an easier way to make options, but I mean, I think
I
you
mean,
have
we
to be
still
included in
can't
that. We're not
spend
gonna
it.
leave you in the dark.
am I correct? We still can't spend it till you approve the peer review, correct?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to answer that question as opposed to the applicant answering it. So that's correct. You can't spend it until it's authorized by the applicant. At least that would be my recommendation. You know, I'm going to counsel the board not to get into this package deal mentality between
Right.
administrative fee and reducing the administrative fee below what the applicant's even offering in exchange for a greater peer review fee. The peer review, you're going to get the peer review money one way or the other. I understand you prefer to get it up front.
Yeah.
The bottom line is you're entitled to peer review. The applicant just admitted on the record that you're entitled to peer review and that the HAC would not support him if he argued to the contrary. You're going to get the peer review money. So what I might recommend, since you have to make decisions on who you're going to proceed with on peer review, is that we decide which firm you're more comfortable with minimally. Right, so you've got scopes of services before you, but if you put aside the services for the moment, you've also got resumes for the engineers that would provide the services. You've got sheets that provide information on experience with Chapter 40B, experience inside and outside the town of Lunenburg. Minimally decide which firm you're more comfortable with, and maybe you may say we're more comfortable with Graves. That makes it an easy decision because their number is already the lower of the two. Maybe you'll say we're more comfortable with PSC, and then the question becomes, okay, can PSC do it for a number that's in keeping with the Graves engineering number? And maybe you could at least leave here, that might be something that you could task, let's say, the chairman with. I wouldn't advise the board to task the chairman with, okay, well, try to negotiate these two scopes and pick one you see. No, but saying, you know, we're more comfortable with PSC if PSC can do it for Graves Engineering's price, or we're comfortable with Graves Engineering, in which case we can vote that right here and now. Well, then you know you have a number, right? Then you know you're dealing with a number, call it $20,800. That number may vary depending upon additional services provided, additional meetings attended. But if you're dealing with that number, plus the $8,000 for the traffic peer review that's supposed to already be underway, at least then we can sort of narrow the discussion we're having with the applicant about what the peer review. I think then it's fair for you to say, I know the applicant's making a pitch to provide half of that. I think it would be fair for you to demand the entirety of that if that's what you at least have quotes for. That's a different question than the other question, and the one that the applicant seems to be objecting to even more, which is this higher number of 45, where you don't even have a totality of quotes that equal 45,000 yet.
Right. What do we have right now?
I just think that there's got to be a reason why there's a quote that's almost double what, PSC. So, I mean, I know Tom Houston, I mean, I think, remember working with him on the 40B. So, I mean, he's competent and knows 40B, which is what we want the town, and we want someone who, knows 40B and is going to, look after our best interest. I mean, whether you go back to him and say, we don't need this, we don't need that, where does he come out on that? Could be $5,000 more than what these guys are, but I mean, if they come to a couple meetings, there's the 5K right there.
Mr. Chair?
Sorry.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, this is Dave. I feel like we have two different things we need to either make a motion or vote on. One of them is on this we need to completely separate these two, as town council has mentioned a couple of times now. So I don't have an issue if we want to, if you want to take a motion on being able to lower the fees to a number, to the $10,000 number, which would be more in line with other towns, as well as what I feel is the true administrative cost because of the extensive work that's needed in regards to the amount of paper, the amount of other things, the amount of follow-up and everything else that's needed for us to do this. So I would look at this as that we need to separate these two. So if the need is that we take a motion and we vote on whether we're willing to lower the administrative fee to $10,000, let's do that. And then we can move the conversation to the peer review and what you want to do there. So I'm open for your suggestions at this point.
Did he make a motion?
He did not make a motion.
So I'll make a motion that we reduce the administration fee to $10,000 from the $41,000 that's in our bylaws.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion to, for the administration fee to be lowered to the 10,000, which is more in line with probably what it should be. We have a motion and a second, so I'll ask for a vote.
Aye.
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 And I'll say aye. David, you made the motion.
Aye. If I made the motion, I'd probably be an aye.
Okay, so we did the administration fee, it is 10,000. And on the peer review technical planning fee, review fee, we'll move on to that.
May I make a comment regarding that?
Certainly.
Sure. So right now, how many quotes do we have, and what does that total?
Right now, the lowest quote from the Graves is 20,800, I believe, yeah, 20,800, and PSC is 41,000.
And then we have
There is a
8,000
large
plus.
description.
We have 8,000 plus for traffic, so now we're up to 30 already,
Correct.
as a minimum 30. My
Correct.
question is the applicant taking offense with the cost of these two different ones, the disparity in the cost, or are they just saying that we need to always go with the lower bidder? And the other side of it is, we want to, even if we look at going with the lowest one, we've already come up with that we need at least 30,000 in here. And we haven't even gotten into other peer review. Why is the asking for 45,000 so outrageous and unreasonable for that? Do they believe that there is a way that we can get away with not, that all these peer reviews won't reach 45,000? That's my first two questions to the applicant, through you.
Okay, thank you, David. By the way, David is a member coming in on Zoom. Okay, so we're back to the technical part. So I agree that, I think we should take the full amount now because I see this money going quickly. But, you know, the minimum, I agree, would be around 30,000. And I would ask for, if the board was willing to go with that, I would ask for something that says, when that gets down to, say, 15,000, that you're gonna replenish it by adding back the 15 or so, that whatever is shortfall. No, yes?
Would you like me to respond to some of those things, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, I'd ask for a response from the board first.
So, Mr. Chair, may I try again? I'm sorry, it's tough to raise your hand here. But I would look at this that if we have to do the replenishment method, if the idea was that we're running out and we have to do that also that we add for the time it takes to receive a new check and to have that deposited, that gets added to the time allotted for this discussion. In this case, in the case of the traffic, if it took 5 days, we should add 5 days to the 180 days.
Mr. Chairman, you're saying that if the number of days it takes for the delay to get the check and have it deposited and so forth should be added at the end of the hearing.
Yeah, that's kind of what I suggested up front, but I didn't suggest that, but, okay. So I'll ask for the board's feelings on the,
I think we should just get the whole 45 up front and just be done with it.
rest of the board, any feelings?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see anything under Graves as far as how they want to get paid, but I know like the PSC says they'll submit invoices monthly.
I find this has a lot of ambiguity in it, unlike the PSC was more detailed and had a lot more information.
Okay, if you'd like to speak.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, my name is Kevin O'Brien, I am the applicant. I think at the first meeting, we talked about the peer reviews. We talked about, we'll get a peer review, we'll get prices for peer reviews, and we would post the money at that point. We're going around and around on this peer review on the engineers right now. If we agreed to the traffic study, we gave the $8,900, whatever it was. Tonight, if we give the Graves money of $20,800, if we get into the sewer department and they have a review, we will pay that amount. Same thing with water. Everyone's worried about time. If we're going to worry so much about time, maybe you pass us along or let our design team move along with the sewer department and the water department and get those things in motion. I don't have a problem paying the $20,800 tonight. Not tonight, but you're approving that tonight. And as the other ones come in, we'll pay them. I mean, we've got this now, we've got this meetings, we're meeting with you a couple of weeks ago, we started every 2 weeks. If it has to be that, and I'm fine with that. Not that I'm fine with it, because I have to come out here at night, but if that's the way it has to be because of the time frame, we'll do that. But again, when we first talked about peer reviews, that's the understanding I had. So if we can get through this one, we pay the $20,800, we can go to the next discussion of water and sewer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the $8,500 check for the traffic has already been issued and all that. So right now, from what they're talking about is the lower bid, the $20,800, to approve that one now.
Yeah, but I don't think the applicant's dictating what
No.
peer review we're using, like technical review.
No, I was gonna say the $20,800, you know, I agree, because I wish it came in with a lot more details, because it doesn't say what 40Bs they've done in town, or other 40Bs, or what their qualifications are. I'm sure they're good. I'm sure the planning board works with them. But to me, at this point, it's just too little information at this time. I've never worked with them. I know, like I say, the planning board has. Our town council says that he's very familiar with them, and he feels, I think he feels, that they're both competent. So, but I want to make a decision tonight, because we need to get these peer reviews moving.
Decision on the money or decision on who we're gonna use?
I'd like to get a decision not on both, because I'd like to get the peer reviews moving, because like I say, that, if we blow this off to the next hearing, that's another.
I don't think we should. I think we should determine what we're gonna have them put in for the fees. And then I think we would charge you to
Work
go
with-
back to
right.
PSC and just find out what that discrepancy is in the $20,000 where they're both reviewing the same project.
Right.
And give you the authorization to move forward with who you think, and in consultation with the applicant, you're not gonna leave them out of the dark. And, we don't, I agree, $20,000 is a lot, that's a big delta, right? So we just wanna be able to have the chairman communicate, figure out where that delta is, and then make a decision, I would think, because we wanna keep moving.
And if there's
Is that
more,
acceptable?
I'm expecting the Graves submittal came in without resumes, because you have a 27-page submittal from PSC, but 18 of those pages are resume. You don't have any resume from Graves. I'm expecting they probably didn't send their resume because they work with the town on a regular basis. So the planning board probably has 20 pages of resume in their folders that you just don't have. So, if the board wants to take in more information on who Graves
My
is and
concern,
what they're.
I'm sure they have great resumes. I'm sure they do a great job. I just don't know their experience with 40Bs, because there's nothing here that tells me who they've done and what towns.
Yeah, and I've just had some litigation on a 40B where they were the town peer reviewer. So they do 40Bs. In the town of Grafton, I can tell you that. That's about the extent of my experience with them, but they were on the other side of litigation, working for the town of Grafton as peer reviewer. But that's the sort of information the board should have, and I think one way to possibly solve this is you give the chair some authority. Chair collects some of this information you're talking about, fills in some of the holes, and has parameters to make a call on peer review. And that's, sometimes that's often delegated just to not just to, but to the town planner or to town staff even to do that, make that kind of call. But I think that's an efficient way to go forward. We talked about that a little bit in an earlier hearing session. Now you've gone through one round of peer review, you've gotten deep into the second round of peer review. These things typically show up the night before a meeting. Both these proposals came in yesterday. One came in the morning, one came in the afternoon. But
Okay. Do you have any more?
So I take no issue with that. I think the key word is parameters, right? So if you're going to delegate the task to whether it be staff or in this case the chair, you've got to give the chair parameters. So what are you delegating exactly? Are you saying, so the more feedback you can provide to the chair, the better. Are you saying, you like what you see from PSE because you have 27 pages of estimate with resumes and supporting information? I misspoke earlier. I said we had it from Graves. We don't. You're correct. We have 2 pages from Graves. So you can't compare apples to apples. But are you saying you're comfortable with PSC's experience, and so you're directing the chairman to review that same information for Graves? If Graves has the same or similar 40B experience, what is the directive then? Is it the chair's judgment call which to use then, based upon what factors? Is it, if you can get the Graves, the PSC quote to be closer to Graves within a couple $1,000s, then go with PSC? Or is it, if you review Graves' experience and expertise and it's equivalent to PSC, then just go with Graves because their quote is lower? So I think that providing some direction to the chair is going to make that decision less arbitrary.
Mr. Chair, this is Dave again. I feel like what we're doing here is that we're being asked to already sit here and choose a peer review, which is fine. But in the end, that means that every time, if we have to do this every single time, we are going to have a delay every single time when it comes to getting our peer review person on board, getting a check, getting it deposited, and getting them money to try to do this. My whole point here is I feel like at this point, we need to have a confirmation from the applicant that any time of delay that this is causing will be added to the end of the time frame. So in other words, right now, instead of 180 days, it should be 185 days. And if this goes on, and it has to be where, we got to pick one or the other, and if we go with PSC, it's when that check for $40,000 shows up, that's when it goes again for that thing. So it is in the end, it should be up to us who we feel is the best peer review person for the town of Lunenburg, within reason. I understand that within reason, but that's the whole idea, is that it's not up to the applicant to pick the peer review person. It's up to the town of Lunenburg. And I agree, we've had some great success with PSC on doing this as a board, as a 40B. The planning board has no experience with, the 40B application. Their experience is in other areas other than this. So, to me, go and postpone the peer review for the civil till we do some due diligence. However, when we say to them, okay, it's time for a check, anytime while we're waiting for that check to show up, because they've decided not to put the $45,000 into escrow, that gets added on to the end of the time frame. And if this takes 5 to 10 days each time, we're going to end up with an extra month or two at the end of this thing, and so be it. But I feel like all this is doing is making our clock tick without for undue reason. And I think we need to resolve that first.
Did you hear that, Mr. Chairman?
Most.
Okay. Go ahead. Dave, can I ask you a quick question? So if the applicant put the $45,000 into as the technical fee, it wouldn't not be an issue, correct? Because it would not be being piecemeal checks, waiting for the checks, this and that. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. We could agree on the peer review person and be done.
The money's in the bank.
Reasonable fee, right? We can agree that it's a reasonable fee and just move on. Right now, we have to wait each time.
Gotcha.
And that's ridiculous.
Okay, thank you. So I think that's what Dave's saying. If they put up the full fee, we wouldn't have this piecemeal going back to the applicant for money. And if the applicant decides that they want to do piecemeal and not the whole 45K, what Dave's saying is that, if it takes 5 days for the check to get to us and clear, then 5 days should be added on. The applicant should, grant us 5 days added on to the length of the project here. So it's not a delay on our part.
Right, okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Aye.
I have some reservations about this Graves home. To me, I see a lot of hidden cost in this one, where PSC lays it out in black and white, what they're going to do. And then my question is, if there's hidden cost, who's responsible for the hidden costs that come up during this project?
Well, they would be, because it does state in here that there would be additional cost. Should additional service be requested, additional funds may be required. So they would be responsible.
So I assume they would cut you off until you rework that by saying that.
What's that?
Graves would, cut you off and not do any more work until you agreed on their next round, is what I'm assuming that means.
No, like I say, this needs to be done.
I feel that they would do the work, but they wouldn't give you the whole package until they were compensated for their time. So I just see a lot of hidden costs and a lot of other things involved in this Graves thing that, to me, throws up some red flags.
Okay.
I guess,
We have, the fee's 45,000, right? Total. The,
Yeah, 45,000 total in technical. Yep.
and let's just say it's given us the 85.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
So like
take that
37.
off,
So you're at like 37, 36.
37.5.
Yeah.
right? So I think maybe what we're saying is to give us the amount, if you deposited 37.5, you would bring us up to the 45. And then, like I say, on the technical review part. I think that's what the board's asking for. I think that's what David's referencing.
Dave, are you happy with that? If we could get 37.5, somewhere around there?
Well, they've already given us the 8,500 for traffic.
Correct. Listen, I'm happy with whatever number we come up with, but there should be a number in escrow
Right.
that could be used to avoid delays.
Yeah, I
Unless the applicant wants to agree on the fact that there will be delays and that this is gonna go well over 180 days. My big thing is that, any delay, we're trying to get this thing done quickly and within reason. Hopefully that makes sense.
While they're discussing that, Mr. Chairman, I think we should give you some direction. I'd be okay with you going back to PSC and just trying to see, if you compare what Graves has, numbers, number of meetings, and then, compare apples to apples with PSC, remove maybe some of the stuff that we think we may not need, I don't know, architectural, I think, certainly, you could have somebody else review that if they needed to, but see if PSC can,
Like I said, yeah.
I mean,
I'm
$20,000 is a lot of money. So, okay, what is it, what is that?
What is it, right?
Yeah, that's what I would ask.
Okay.
But I think we should make a decision and then charge you with it and, on behalf of the board, make that decision, make that call, whether you're going with PSC and Graves, if PSC comes back to you, and then make it. If the applicant has the money in there, boom, we're done. And we're on our way. So the next meeting that we have, which would be after Thanksgiving, we
Right,
can
it
see
wouldn't be
something. We
until-
could have the traffic and maybe some engineering in front of us.
Correct.
Are you willing to put the $37,000 in?
It isn't willing. I think that right now, we just gotta make a decision.
Okay.
It's our decision.
All right.
At this point.
I'll make a
I
motion.
feel.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we ask the applicant to put $37,000 into the technical peer review fund.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Mr. Chairman, I might suggest, if I could, sorry to interrupt your motion and your second, that the number be reduced to 36.5 based upon the $8,500 that's
Okay.
been received.
Yep.
So you're not going over
Yep.
what your regulations require?
Okay.
Right.
36.5, I'm amend that, sorry.
should we re-say that?
I make a motion that we ask the applicant to put $36,500 into the technical review fund for the 40B project.
I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 And I'll say aye.
Dave.
David?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, so now, I will review them hopefully tomorrow. We can get some more information and, see where we go. see what the difference is. Okay.
Mr. Chair, if the board is giving you the authority to choose a peer reviewer, I would suggest a
have to
motion to
motion
that
it.
effect.
Yeah. So we need another motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we give you the authority to, in consultation with counsel and applicant, on behalf of the ZBA, come into an agreement with peer review.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 David?
Aye.
Okay.
So now please
Motion
explain that to
passed.
me if you would, Mr. Chairman.
What's that?
What was just voted on?
Say it again.
Voted on. You're going to be able to check the two.
I'm just gonna try and talk to the two, to find out what the difference is, why they're so much higher than this one. And just try and get it so we're comparing apples to apples, see if maybe they're doing things that aren't necessary, that would equal, they could come down in price and just make what we think is gonna be the best, for the town.
Okay, for the record, we're talking about, us dragging our feet, getting the check in, getting it cleared and all that. You started this process a month ago to get peer reviews, okay?
Right.
You got 2 traffic people, a couple weeks ago. Today or yesterday, you just got Graves and the other one, that's a month, okay? We're trying. We can't help if they're not getting back to you.
Understand.
2 people said, no, they're not interested in bidding.
Right.
So, that was from Adam Darby.
So, we,
I'm sorry, Adam Birdie, I'm sorry. So we're trying to move this thing along. What I'd asked, and I think Dawn would ask the same thing, is what other peer reviews are we gonna be looking for? So we don't get to the next meeting in a month.
right. No,
2
I
months,
agree.
And then we say, yeah, we need water.
Right.
Or we need sewer now. I don't know how they're gonna, again, as I suggested earlier, maybe you let us talk to them, let the engineers, and we talk to the water department, and we talk to the sewer department, and get a sense of where that $20,000 number came from. They don't even have any plans. There's nothing. As you guys all talked about, there's no plans. I don't know where the $20,000 price can come from, an assumption, but if we're gonna move this thing along, that would be a suggestion I would make, please.
Okay, thank you. You want to respond? We good?
So I can attempt to respond. I mean, I don't disagree with the applicant's comments that if water and sewer are going to be topics that you'll want to discuss and have peer reviewed, that it makes sense to start that conversation sooner than later. I think the applicant just referenced 20,000. I think his reference is not to what we've been discussing tonight, but I did see other correspondence submitted by a separate firm. I believe that firm was contacted by your sewer commission or your sewer staff and asked to provide a quote as to what it would cost to review the project. I did have at least one conversation with Barbara Lefebvre about her communication, and she said to me as well that part of the difficulty with what she was seeking a quote for was that she didn't have plans. She didn't have sufficiently detailed plans to provide sufficient notice to these peer review consultants as to what it would be that they'd be peer reviewing. So I think it makes sense to start that conversation tonight. But in terms of delay and dragging feet, and nobody's pointing any fingers, but even if you had quotes before you tonight, we don't have plans yet. So what the substance of what's going to be reviewed by these water and sewer peer reviewers, if you choose to select water and sewer peer reviewers, isn't even before you yet. And you need to get that information so you can pass it along. And ideally, you would have it before you can get more accurate quotes as to what the peer review will cost.
Right.
Yeah, because we did get one from Wright Pierce, and it was $20,000.
That came from the sewer commission.
This is for the sewer, right? And it basically says, we've received an estimate of $20,000 to perform the peer review, although we have noted that it's difficult to estimate the scope of work without definitive plans from the applicant. So.
Right. And again, that, it's always, the terminology kind of matters here, so I'm seeing the applicant's attorney's ears perk up at definitive plans. I mean, they're not going to provide construction plans. They're not going to provide fully engineered plans, but I suspect, and I'm no engineer, but I suspect that they're going to require more, they said they're going to require more than what they've got in order to perform any sort of a meaningful peer review.
Right. And that actually is next on the agenda. The last thing is sewer and water. So I think that it is this, or it's at
Well, at
least.
least we know a placeholder is 20K.
Huh?
I said we at least have a placeholder for sewer, somewhat of an estimate.
Right.
From one
Right.
peer review, that's $20,000, and probably more than that.
Like I say, we would have to ask for a quote from them. And we'll ask for whatever quote, a couple of them at least, but it kind of would make sense maybe to use that one because they are so familiar with the whole structure of the water system in Lunenburg and the way they do it. But that's not, I don't know who we would pick for sewer and water, but you want to know who we're going to have for peer reviews, and I really think that is going to be certainly one of them up front. So you want to know, so without question, that's going to be.
So,
And I can't tell you any numbers, of course, because like you say, we don't have any, other than like what a sewer commission has provided.
We still don't have plans to submit to them, though. There's still no plans.
Right, there's still no plans to submit to them, that's
How
correct.
do we move, that's what I was saying earlier, sorry. How do we move forward on that?
So, Mr. Chairman, I mean, that's the million-dollar question, right? And I'm a bit surprised we're getting it from the applicant because the water and sewer district and commission are not going to create plans for an extension that the applicant's proposing. So I think that we need those plans from the applicant to then provide to the potential peer review consultants. And I would agree, when we get to the water and sewer, we're dealing with existing systems. And I know the sewer commission has a consultant it works with. It's its consultant for its system. I suspect, I don't represent the water district, which is independent. I suspect the water district has a consultant that it works with for the water system. So it may be less about reaching out to 3, 4, 5 consultants to get quotes. It may just be going to the person that has the familiarity, the entity that has the familiarity with the system and getting a quote. But for them to provide a realistic quote, I know we have one for 20,000. That could be way less than the realistic quote. It could be way more. I mean, it could be because they don't have more definitive plans. So I think we need that information from the applicant before we can fine tune the quotes and then get authorization to commence the peer review.
So what council is saying is you want us to do plans, sketches, whatever, for the water and the sewer, bring them to you. You in turn will pass them on to the water and the sewer departments. Now, are we gonna do that at your next meeting? Which is a month from now, and then we lose another month in water and sewer. And then we're gonna look at, once they get those plans, they are gonna get, send them out to consultants and say, give us an idea what we're looking at for a peer review. If it's anything like the engineering here, it's another month. So now we're into 4 months already on our schedule. I'm just saying that, I'm
Well,
trying
how
to
long is it going to,
say-
do you have the plans? Do you have any plans?
I do. As John said earlier, I've surveyed it from here to the Gulf Station at Route 2A. I can take that plan and I can put a water line on there and bring it to Fran and I can.
So
bring it
if
to
you
the-
could have the plans, so you're saying you could submit them now?
Pardon?
You could submit those plans now?
Not with me right now.
No, I mean tomorrow.
Couple of days, I could.
Couple of days.
I could put the lines on there and, yes, I could
So-
submit plans.
So we could, if you give us the plans, look for a peer reviewer starting tomorrow or whenever we get the plans. Go out and try and get them, and if, I don't know, they could possibly have information, but I think we could do traffic the next hearing. That should be ready. And certainly if they had any information or any inkling, we could do that as well, that hearing. Like I say,
I guess my question would be, are we allowed, this team, my team, allowed to talk to Fran at the water department or the ladies and gentlemen at the sewer department I mean, I don't want to just take a plan, draw a line on it. I mean, let's face it, it's going to go down Howard Street to West Towns Road and up Chase Road. That's where the water and the sewer are both going to go. So there's 3 roads that it's going to go on. There's no other ones that we can do unless we went cross-country. I don't have any easements from anybody. So it's going to go down those 3 roads. Does it make sense to allow me or my engineer to talk to those 2 departments preliminarily and say to them, what do you think? I know you don't want it, but what do you think if we do want it, if we do get it?
I don't think that would be out of line, but
So respectfully, Mr. Chairman, I mean, the applicant doesn't need permission from this board to communicate with the water district, nor does the applicant need permission to communicate with the sewer commission. I don't doubt that the reception that's received may initially be, well, we're not in support of this, but the district and the commission understand the process that's underway before your board. I also don't take responsibility and wouldn't want the board to take responsibility for dragging feet or slowing up the process. We've had an application on our hands for months and we don't have these plans yet. They could have been submitted with the application. I tend to think that there's more involved than taking plans and drawing a line on them. I hope that there's going to be more detail than that. I expect that the consultants are going to want to see more detail than that to confirm that they meet with the specifications of the water district and the sewer commission. But ultimately, it's going to be, to the extent that this board determines it has the authority to do so, it's going to be this board that is acting for the water district and this board that's acting for the sewer commission. So the buck stops here, but you're going to, just as you would look to the district and the commission for advice, I would highly recommend that the applicant communicate with the district and the commission to get their feedback on what's being proposed. It's also not unusual for these peer reviews to be sequenced in this way. I mean, even if we had it all today and you signed off on peer reviews for water and sewer today, you likely wouldn't be looking at those until January or maybe February. You haven't even started traffic yet. It's almost Thanksgiving, let alone civil engineering. So it's not unusual to sequence them in this manner. So even if it's another meeting or 2 before you receive plans and receive peer review proposals, that still gives us enough time within the 180 days, hopefully, to be able to get those peer reviews done, for you to review them and to make informed decisions.
and if it gets that close, we'll have a hearing every week if we have to.
Right. And I mean, if there are unforeseen circumstances, applicant, board, there's always the possibility to discuss extension of that time period. You can't unilaterally extend it, but generally speaking, if progress is being made, I've not known the applicant's counsel or other applicants' attorneys to refuse reasonable extensions if you're up against it and progress is being made. But, we're still months away. So I know you're mindful of the date, you should be, but we're still months away.
Okay.
Would it be possible, Mr. Chairman, at the next hearing to hear from actually representatives of the sewer department and the water department? I know when we had public comment, I don't know if they were acting in the capacity of those, but they certainly shared their sentiments. But I'm wondering, while the applicant's getting his plans together, while we're trying to figure out who we would use, because the problem is, these engineers can't put a number to it because they don't have a plan to look at. So how can they, they can come up with a number, but it's arbitrary, right? But I would be just keeping with the sewer and water, maybe the next meeting we have representatives from them that can, we can have an honest discussion with them. Maybe in the meantime, you can find out who they would recommend for some peer reviewers, so we're not, we're ahead of the game on that. So the water department can give you folks that they've used for peer review, and the sewer department can do it. So next time, maybe they're before us, but you also know ahead of time who we might be able to reach out to once the applicant has plans.
Yeah, I think once you get the plans, if we reach out to peer reviews, and like our counselor says, if you go to the sewer and water departments, fine, you can communicate all you want with them. And we come up with, let's say, who we decide that we think is going to be best for it. They still would have to go through those plans. So if they had the plans and could give some sort of a quote or something to us at that time, we send it to you. You could approve it at that time. Or does it have to be done, it has to be done at the public hearing?
So not necessarily. I mean, I'm a little confused by the sequencing. I mean, I think this first step is for the applicant to submit updated plans.
Plans, right.
Those plans can be submitted to this board simultaneously with being submitted to the Water District and the Sewer Commission. At that same time, the applicant can begin discussions with the Water District and the Sewer Commission. Again, these discussions aren't going to be about the Sewer Commission's support for providing sewer to the site. We've seen in writing that they don't support that. It's not going to be about the Water District's support for providing water to the site. Same thing we've seen from the Water District, they don't support it. It's going to be about, if that's what ends up happening, even over your objection, what are the technical specifications for this line? They're going to be looking to technically review what's submitted. Does it meet with the Water District's requirement for laying a new water line within a public roadway? Same thing with respect to a sewer line. It's going to be a technical review. And so I think that those discussions can happen, and then once the board has plans, it can send those off. You can engage staff, as you've done, to reach out to peer review consultants at the recommendations of the district or the commission as to who they use, get quotes back, and then at a future meeting in December, maybe, your board can vote on those scopes of services. After the first of the year, we can have water and sewer reviews back.
Now, is that something that the Water and the Sewer Commission departments would be the ones that put the bids out, or put the calls out for the peer reviews? I know Adam has been the one that's been doing that.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, it would be this board. The peer reviews are being done at the behest of this board. You're the sole permitting authority under 40B, correct. Now, again, I know you got a quote already through the Sewer Commission, because the Sewer Commission solicited the quote from its vendor, its consultant. You can, again, whether they're the go-between or not, ultimately the contract is with your board.
Contract would be with us, right. Okay.
Then what I'll do, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'll meet with the Water and Sewer departments, just on a preliminary basis. I know they can't make any decisions. I certainly know that. I just want their take. I'm sure, I've talked to Fran many times through the years. Not that he's ever said, yep, go ahead, put it in. But, you know, I just want logically, where do you want it? You know, you want it on the right side, the left side? I mean, if we're gonna put it on a plan, I don't think we're gonna put it on a plan on the left side, right side, especially being a sketch plan. But those are the three roads that it's gonna go on. Those are the three roads it goes on. But I just, if there's anything I get from them, we'll see if we can incorporate it on the plan. I'll get the plans to Dawn and we'll get them to you, and hopefully we can have something for the next meeting with that discussion, instead of getting to the next meeting and saying, okay, let's start the water and sewer.
Okay. I think our next hearing is going to be December 14th. Is that correct?
I think so.
I have to check the calendar in my head. We're not going to, the next one would have been day before Thanksgiving. I'm sure nobody wants to be here then.
Second Wednesday would be the 14th.
Yes.
Okay. So our next hearing would be December 14th. So if you could have those plans and some information on sewer and water, and also hopefully there'll be some traffic report that night. And
Do you think, Mr. Chairman, we can arrange to have the Sewer Commission, a representative from the Sewer and Water come just talk to us?
I'm sure that they will want to.
I think it'd be worthwhile.
Yeah.
If these guys are having plans, we can talk about, and I would see if we could solicit peer reviewers that they've worked with. Maybe they can give us 2 or 3, and, you know, we can share with the applicant. But I mean, we're getting ahead, you know what I mean? We're being proactive about it. We can hear from the water, sewer, review traffic, and then talk about peer review for the sewer and water.
Okay. Any other, I will go to the public now, if anybody from the public would like to speak.
Oh, one other thing, just environmental, I know somebody had brought up,
Yeah.
there was a,
Carl Strathmeyer.
yes, yeah, he brought up an environmental review, so have we heard anything on that?
No, what I'm waiting for on that is, part of what I'm waiting for on the civil engineers is to find out their background, like in environment.
Okay.
So we know if they've got a good background, extensive, or somebody on staff that has that.
Okay.
Then
'Cause-
there's no, you know, we can use that, but
Okay.
if we have nobody,
Okay.
if they don't have anybody, then we gotta consider it.
Okay, because
But that's-
I know his concern was the Mulpus Brook watershed, so I just want
Right.
to see maybe if these guys will take into that.
Absolutely, and that's
Okay.
why it's so important to have a good civil engineer for water runoff and environmental and all the other things. All right, I'm gonna ask if there's any public discussion. Would anybody like to speak or say anything? Seeing none, got off public discussion. Bring it back to the board. Is there anything else to discuss tonight? Don't believe so?
I don't think so. I had environmental, sewer, civil engineering, and fees, and I think we've discussed those, so.
Okay,
And so, Mr. Chair, the intention for the December 14th meeting is going to be to discuss traffic. That'll be a
Traffic.
traffic meeting, presuming the traffic peer review has been received. Presuming the traffic peer
right,
review has been
presuming it's
received by
gonna be
then.
received, yeah. And then back to the water and sewer.
After plans are submitted.
Uh-huh.
After the plans.
Yeah, correct. They should be submitted in the next couple of days.
And you're gonna make a decision on the,
Yeah, I'm gonna just try and get more information, see if we can get apples to apples here, find out why there is such a big discrepancy.
Okay.
You know, they may tell me that they're, you know, because they do have a sentence in here saying that they have a right for all the additional fees, I don't know what they are.
Right.
Okay, then we can make if we're done for the night, we can have the hearing will be continued until December 14th, 7 o'clock. We will discuss, hopefully, traffic and the peer reviews for sewer and water. With that, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to continue the public hearing.
What's that?
Motion to continue the public hearing.
Oh, yes, then we need a motion to continue.
I'll make a motion that we continue the hearing to December 14th.
I will second that.
All in favor?
Bye.
Aye.
David?
Aye.
And I. Thank you.
Enjoy the holiday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Second?
Second that motion to adjourn?
Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I.
Aye.
Good night, David.
Good night, Dave.
Thanks for having me.